be seated. Good morning, St. Thomas of Canterbury Episcopal Church.
Good morning.
Yes, everybody's turned out to pray, everybody's smiling, everybody's singing, everybody's listening to the word, and we're all going to eat. It's going to be, what's not to like? Well, no news here. You and I live in a time of political upheaval, uncertainty, and polarity. As deeply as some of us may feel this national jolt, it is nothing in comparison to the mega jolt the ancient Israelites received in their own history twice. National calamities twice. Let me recap this morning only the second one, the second national disaster. Now you remember that the land of Israel is on that important territory in the Golden Crescent, running from Egypt to Babylon and Persia. Thus, the two Israelite kingdoms of Judah and Israel would be embroiled in the power struggles of the superpowers of their day. Sometimes they would be innocent pawns shifted around, and other times they would play the dangerous game of tag between mouse and elephant. Guess who was mouse? So in 598 to 597 BC, Nebuchadnezzar mobilized his army for a full invasion of Judah, the remaining kingdom. And the 18-year-old king, who was placed as a puppet earlier, who had been plotting against Nebuchadnezzar on the side, all his children were brought to him. The eyes of his children were poked out. Then his eyes were poked out, and he was taken as hostage to Babylon. Also with the leading courtiers and the cream of their society, the politicians especially. They took, well, you get us there, you get there. Okay. So they also took the prophet called Ezekiel. And they were there for 60 years. By the rivers of Babylon we sat and wept for Zion. Sing us a song of Zion. How can we do that in a foreign land? So 60 years they were in exile. And then, as superpowers go, in 539 BC, Babylon falls to the Persian Empire. And the king, Artaxerxes, I can never say this, the second, what? Nobody knows, okay. So he's in charge, this new superpower guy, Artaxerxes, and he dictates return of the Jews to their land because he has a very sort of, all you conquered people go back, you pay homage to me, but you go back to your land. And he commissions Ezra, priest and scribe, to reestablish the religious life of Israel. So the exiles return to the land, and today in this stirring reading, read so well by Anne-Marie, we hear that the first time they're back in the land, they start reading the law again, and they weep because this they thought was lost to them, their ancient religious heritage. And it was simultaneously translated into the language they spoke, which was Aramaic, so they would understand it. Then it was preached, it was interpreted for them too. So here is their lost language, Hebrew. Their lost culture, their lost spirituality has come back to them. Ezra says today in the scripture, "Today is holy to the Lord your God. Do not mourn or weep. Go your way, eat the fat and drink sweet wine, and send portions of them to those who have nothing prepared. For this day is holy to the Lord, and do not be grieved, for the joy of the Lord is your strength." I think it's hard for Americans to understand, to lose all your politics, your culture, and your religion by an invading army. I don't think generally we can get that except by stretch. So, friends, To me, it's interesting that Ezra tells them that today is the day of the Lord. Not what it was when we left 50, 60 years ago, but today. In other words, Ezra's saying, don't give me the old-time religion. That is gone. But give me the new-time religion, the living religion in the present. You know, nostalgia is not necessarily a religious virtue. We remember in order to recall God's grace and to celebrate and to renew our mission to be, present tense, God's faithful people. Scriptures speak to us, but in the midst of celebration, lest they turn to dead, dry law and evoke dead, dry tears from us. Religion is always in the present. I know little about Christianity and almost nothing about world religions, but don't they all say that living in the present is the great spiritual discipline? I think they all do. Being in the present. Not being depressed about the past or anxious about the future, but living here in this present. A mentor of mine spoke years ago of the difference between anamnesis and amnesia. Don't you love all these words? Anamnesis and amnesia. The difference is anamnesis is where we remember our past as seminal as who we are in the present. And amnesia, of course, is forgetting who we are past in the past. So the tears of joy, anamnesis in their story and our story, in their language and culture. Anamnesis, they brought it back to the present. And terror, shame, enervating loss of identity, amnesia. Could there be parallels between the ancient Israelites and St. Thomas of Canterbury? Let's think about it. Okay, I'm going to go there. We live in much less scorched earth and draconian times, yes. But this time of transition at Canterbury, too, is here upon us now in the present. We have left the past, near past and past and long past. We have left the past with all its blessings and functions and dysfunctions, joys, tears, and routines that we can never get back again. It is gone, finito, caput, disparu. The constellation of personalities and group dynamics do not exist any longer. They haven't for a while. The larger society in which Canterbury lived and moved and has its being in the past is gone too. Our politics are different, our politicians are different, our city is different. And so we set out into a journey in the future, the outcome of which we cannot control, but we can carefully and prayerfully perhaps manage to some degree. Thus, this journey into the future can be daunting and sometimes overwhelming. Many of you recall with fondness the founding days of this parish. You hold the rector at that time in high esteem for his skill at gathering and cohesing and educating and empowering people, you guys, to move to your near future. His spiritual DNA and the other clergy leaders you've had, their spiritual DNA is here. I can feel it, and I know you can too. If there are any of us here, though, including me, longing for old-time religion a la Canterbury, I pastorally and bluntly say, get over it. Because St. Paul tells us in Scripture this morning that everyone in all these little churches scattered all over the ancient Near East, everyone in his churches, by definition, have the skills to function their little communities. Imagine that. Did he go there and say, I need a leader, I need a pastor, I need a prophet? No. He said, okay, you guys for the community, you have a leader, you have a prophet, you have a treasurer, you have a rector, you have a senior warden. It's his spiritual theology that God endows individual churches with everything that community needs to flourish, to be faithful, to be filled to the spiritual brim with hearts and souls and voices. So I challenge us all not to squander this treasure in which we've been entrusted by lingering onto a past which is gone forever. Hurts, perceived slights or slights, dreams dashed, intemperate behaviors, regretful flashes of pride. The present and future of Christianity at the corner of Ashe and University is in your hands here, folks, this morning. The present and future of Canterbury, it's right now, here. It's anamnesis, never amnesia.